I just wanted to get your take on Herlings doing all these extra races, mate. Do you think it's
Oh yeah.
necessary? He's obviously an animal and he still wants to get to that 100% feeling of intensity and getting those gate drops. And it's like he's making up for lost time, isn't he? And he even mentioned about, can I do the AMA and then come back and do the Dutch championship? Like, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
I'm torn. I'm torn on it. On one hand, I understand it's almost like revenge racing, where he was
Yeah.
so cooped up for so long, he just wants to race everything. And I relate that to how COVID was, where everybody had quarantine, and it's just like, okay, if you let me out, I'm traveling nonstop for as long as I possibly can. And that's kind of where Jeffrey is with his racing habits right now. But I also think, every time you take a gate drop, there's risk.
Mm.
The odds of getting hurt at a race, in my opinion, are much higher than they are training. There are other riders and gate drops and things like tough blocks that we have in Supercross and just course markers, I guess, in motocross. But just to me, it's an elevated level of risk that I don't really think he needs to take. There are plenty of motocross, MXGP events to race. And let's face it, he's paid to win MXGP World Championships. That's what
Yeah.
KTM and Red Bull and Alpine Stars and his biggest supporters, that's what they care about most. And if you're going to be doing things that could possibly impede that, I think everybody's like, okay, that sounds okay, but let's not lose sight of what the real goal is, because you want to go race the British Championships, right? Which in its own world, in its own element, for riders like Tommy Searle and some of these guys, great series. But for Jeffrey Herlings, who is 102 GP wins and going after, he's chasing legends, right? He's chasing the history books. It's probably unnecessary. And I should not be the one to tell him what to do or what not to do. It's just, that's my perspective on it. Maybe it's a little bit too much, right? Save your energy for what really matters.
And obviously, you know Jeffrey pretty well. You've done podcasts, you've done some video stuff with him. And what's your take on his start to the series? Obviously, he's built nicely. The bloke's a beast. He's racing all the off weekends. He just wants to just that intensity and the dedication and just pretty insatiable appetite for victory, to break records, for success. Chatted to JT last week and he said it's like he's sort of doing revenge racing, just wanting to get everything after it after he missed that time. Pretty ominous for the rest of them with all the momentum he's building, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the favourite to win for me. I think that the guys are going to struggle to beat him. To be honest, like he's just so gnarly. Like I don't know that there's a guy out there that's more obsessed with the sport and more obsessed with. But even like the cool thing with Jeffrey is that he's one of those dudes that watches everything. He's like the motocross overlord. Like there's nothing gets past him. And I can't remember what he asked me when, like we were hanging out at Trentino and straight away it was Ben Trace and like, have you heard about this? I can't, maybe it was like where Cooper was going or like something. But yeah, just relentless. Like, oh, what did you hear about this? What do you think about this? What? So he's just such a student of the game, such a fan of the sport. And I think about Conor McGregor when he was in his prime. The dude was just obsessed with the sport. He knew everything, every fighter, like it was just all consuming, and it seems like it's the same for Jeff. So
You
yeah,
hear him talking about back to the 80s where he like knows records, and with Evert's record, he's like, I got my moto wins though. And he plays with his competitors a bit. He's like in the qualifying race in Spain. He's like, I'll let Prado have the win for the Spanish fan. I won't show everything I got kind of thing. And you wait till Sunday and I'm all over you. He's pretty crazy, Nick.
yeah, dude. So I think the sport is definitely better when he's racing too. Like I just don't, and it would have been so good to see him and Tim go at it again, like add Tim into the mix. But yeah, like I said, I just think that the GPs have so much talent and so much storyline there to work with. And yeah, Jeffrey's still the king of Europe as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think he's putting too much unnecessary risk doing all these extra races? Obviously, he's a unique, complex human that's just, not really normal the way he approaches things. And even he's talking about doing the AMA one weekend and then winning the Dutch championship, 2 days later. Like, what's your take on that sort of approach?
Fuck, just let him eat, eh?
Yeah.
Big dog's got to eat.